President Trump is still hard-pressed on making Canada the 51st state. This as tariffs from both the U.S. and Canada are further escalating tensions between the two countries as the trade war continues. Here to break this down is the host of the Charbonne Report, Michael Charbonne. Good to see you, as always. I want to get your reaction here to what President Trump said about Canada becoming the 51st state. Watch.
And remember, with Canada, we don't need their cars, we don't need their lumber, we don't need their energy, we don't need anything from Canada, and yet it costs us $200 billion a year in subsidy to keep Canada afloat. So when I say they should be a state, I mean that. I really mean that, because we can't be expected to carry a country that is right next to us on our border. It would be a great state. It would be a cherished state.
So, Michael, I mean, he's made these comments before, but he says that doesn't need the lumber, doesn't need the cars. Is that true? And how is Canada responding to those remarks from their president?
Well, John, in less than an hour, we're going to have a new sheriff in town, supposedly. Canada's being thrown into a snap election as the Liberals say it's time for an election. I have to tell you, though, John, I was recently in Charlevoix, Quebec for the G7 leaders covering the meeting for Newsmax, and one of the things that was consistently brought up in my discussions with many of the off-the-record folks who are part of the multinational delegates was they can't believe the insult that Donald Trump had posed against Canada to think that he was going to be able to usurp Canada. Canadians have had a new engaged nationalism and patriotism. I mean, if you think Canada is the second largest landmass in the world, and it's the largest landmass in the G7 with the least amount of population, and when you look at many of the things that Canada compares to in the United States, healthcare is inclusive. America pays about $7,000 a year. Our banking system is strong and sometimes very hard to purchase a house. And in some instances, some of America has a weak banking system. We looked at unionized rates. 30% of Canada is unionized, 10% in the States. So there are many differences, John, between the two of us.
You brought up the election. Right now, Canadians, the Prime Minister is Mark Carney, and he had this to say about Trump's 51st states comment. Watch.
They're disrespectful. They're not helpful, and they need to stop before, and they will have to stop before we sit down and have a conversation about our broader partnership with the United States. But we're Canada. We don't need other people to come to our aid. Come on.
So this is the current Prime Minister. If he does get elected in, as you mentioned, the Canadians are having an election here shortly. Why is the president saying that he would work better with the Liberal Party rather than the Conservative Party in Canada that is also trying to get Pierre Poilievre elected?
Well, it's interesting because he says it was easier. Poilievre, the Conservative, wrote that Carney is weak and would cave to Trump's demands. Canadians want a strong prime minister and someone who's going to stand up. Trump also said that he thought that Poilievre is stupidly no friend of mine, apparently because Poilievre said that he's not a MAGA guy. But if you look, interesting how the Conservative Poilievre and Donald Trump look together. They both talk about legacy media being fake news. We have that problem in Canada. They talk about government is broken. They denounce the right-wing censorship. They criticize the woke left, with all the, tampon Tim and what Trudeau did. And both Poilievre and Trump supported the truckers. So Trump is in an America First agenda. Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative, is in a Canada First, like a maple MAGA. So. Right. But currently, this is where it sits. The Liberals are between 40 and 42% in the popular vote, and the Conservatives are between 36 and 39. Yeah. The Liberals basically are in a political honeymoon, John, currently.
And Michael, I understand too, and correct me if this story. I did see that Carney, the Prime Minister currently, moved some of his offices to New York after 6 days after the tariffs were announced on Canada. Is that true? And are Canadians talking about that?
Well, some of them are. Don't forget, when we get to the hustings, as I said, the Liberals are currently in a honeymoon now because thank God that Trudeau is gone. Now it's going to be up to Pierre Poilievre to represent the things that mean consistency to Canadians. We're talking about a federal deficit. We're talking about immigration. We're talking about bloated government. Many of the same things that Donald Trump is talking about. And yes, Mr. Carney is, this is a man who's never been elected. You got to understand that. That's one of the reasons why he had to call a flash election, because he couldn't stand in Parliament and speak as a Prime Minister of Canada because he doesn't hold a seat.
Right.
So this is going to be a bit of, how does one say, it's going to be a lot of push and shove, but as soon as they get on the hustings, John, you'll start to see more tangible things being brought. And it is going to be a Conservative win is what I'm predicting.
Yeah,
a minority government.
I think a lot of people are expecting that as well. Real quickly, about 30 seconds, but I want to get your thoughts on this real quick, because Canada's trying to offshoot here and eliminate some of the tariffs in between the provinces to offset the tariffs that are going to be taking effect on April 2nd. Is that enough to help Canada, or is it still going to need to rely on the United States?
Canada will have to rely somewhat to the United States, but it's a renewed patriotism. We understand we're going to take a hit, but I'm telling you, John, interprovincial tariffs coming down makes a better scenario for Canada. But it's unfortunate that we can't work together. We're stronger as one.
Absolutely. Michael Charbon, thank you so much. We appreciate you coming on. We'll see you next week. Stay right there. Second hour of Sunday Report starts right now.